Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to the holiday season. Today, I wanted to talk about troubleshooting your story because sometimes we just want to get past that stuck place, and it feels like your story's throwing up some giant wall, and you don't know how to fix it. And you're stuck. It happens to all writers, so don't despair. And it's not you, it's the process. With all the character development and story planning you've done, your story seems stuck and you don't know where to go or what to write. And you can take action to root out the problem so you can continue writing if you know what to do. The first thing to do is to not consider your story a failure, or even worse, you a failure as a writer. Um, it's a process glitch. It happens to everyone. So I just want you to be aware of that, um, and take heart. And today I wanted to talk about a few ways that you can troubleshoot to get out of that stuck place. So let's look at some of those places, things you can do to revive the story thread when it feels like you don't know where to go next or what to do. Approaching your stop point, that big block, is going to depend on the root cause. So let's just look at a few tips to kick your story forward. All right. And the first way to kick your story forward is to take a step back, walk away, do something else, or better yet, work on another scene in your mystery. Uh, you do have to trust the process and wait for the insight, which comes when you're away from your writing space. Staring at the blank screen is not going to do it. All right. Also, you can just get physical while you're away from your desk, and you can trim a hedge or wash dishes or run. Physical energy stimulates mental energy. It's a neurological process and it really works. It's neuroscience, so get physical. All right. A lot of problems often stem from character development. So go back to your character Bible, and especially for your main characters, add more. Think of more dimensions to those characters. Examine their fears, examine their secrets, um, add more details. A close look at your characters often sparks the way to new complications. And this is for plotters, especially look at your storyline. Sometimes you're emotionally attached to a scene or a chapter that really doesn't fit in the overall story. So go back to that storyline and see whether that scene or chapter that makes you feel stuck and you don't know where to go next, maybe it doesn't fit in the story. So you need to think about that. Um, and of course, there's always Chekhov's smoking gun, create a conflict, add an obstacle. Uh, Perhaps a suspect has a reason not to reveal everything to your sleuth. And this goes back to your character Bible. What is it that your suspect is hiding? What is it they're trying to avoid? It may have nothing to do with actual crime your sleuth is trying to solve, but that suspect can still cause problems for your sleuth. All right. And of course, this is really hard. It's hard for me, I know, is create, just be cruel to your sleuth. Just pour on the icky stuff. and you've created this rock star sleuth with multiple talents, and now you have to make them work hard to get to the finish. The bigger the obstacle, the juicier the story. Um, this is really hard for me. This is one of my challenges, is that how can I really challenge my sleuth? How can I make them feel like they've hit an insurmountable problem? Um, so you can look at that to add the stakes, to raise the stakes in your story, and add that bigger conflict or obstacle. So, and speaking of raising the stakes, you can raise the stakes. And this is one of the ways that you keep your story from being episodic, is each time there's a conflict, there's a bigger investment, there's something bigger that's at stake for your sleuth, um, as they try to solve the conflict. Um, Raymond Chandler wrote, when in doubt, have a man come through your door with a gun in his hand. A writer who is afraid to overreach himself is as useless as a general who is afraid to be wrong. So, um, raise those stakes, make it really tough for your sleuth. Um, and then also um, raise the threat level. This is there's physical threats, there's emotional threats, there's philosophical threats. So it may be a gun, it may be a member of the opposite sex who drops an emotional bomb. When good fails and evil wins for the moment, make your sleuth turn cynical. Just put some kind of danger, some threat in front of your sleuth. And then for the first half of your story, don't forget you're heading toward the midpoint, not the end. I think this will help you if you're stuck in the beginning, when you're in the victim's world and your sleuth is trying to figure out who's who and what's what and how things related to the victim. Just think about heading toward the midpoint. Um, what can happen in the story right now is what gets your sleuth closer to the middle. This will help you from rushing toward the end. You just want to get to the middle when your sleuth discovers that, oops, maybe they've been on the wrong path, um, for the whole first half of the story. Um, so give your story lots of room, and head toward that midpoint. Bring in a lot of things that aren't going to work, and so that when your sleuth gets to the midpoint of the story, everything is not working, so they have to rethink what they're doing. All right. And then, of course, in the second half, you're going to head toward the end. Um, you want to make sure that usually as you head toward the end, you have a really good idea of the killer. That's not always true. I know Ian Rankin said he wrote one whole story, the first draft, and he still didn't know who the killer was. So uh, you really have to trust the process, um, and think about changing the villain and explore where that takes you. If you're really, really stuck in your story, think about the person that you thought you've been thinking of as the killer. Brainstorm ideas for who else might be the killer, and see if that helps jazz up your story. All right. Um, and also, if you're stuck, it helps to read in your genre, read other mysteries, look at inspiration from other writers. How do they create problems for their sleuth? How does their sleuth overcome those obstacles? Um, Look at how other authors keep their stories moving. You'll find fresh ideas for your mystery. See what else I have here. Um, Um, that was it for the tips. So those tips are really aimed at helping you identify why you're stalled with the story. The resolution to getting unstuck is often in the story structure or in the cast of your characters. Um, so, once again, I'm going to say trust the process. If you have a good story and you have a great sleuth and you have a victim who's worthy of death, as it were, um, just trust the process. Think of alternative ways to make the story go forward. Taking action is the quickest way to get past your story impediment. So, positive motivation to make this story the best it can be will get your story moving, and a positive outlook that this is just an obstacle for you, the writer, to overcome kicks you out of negative thinking. If you start thinking your story sucks or you start thinking that you're not a good writer, um, that won't get you anywhere. So just remember that this is a process, and getting stuck at certain points in your story is part of the process of writing a story. Every writer has moments when the story doesn't feel right. Remember that writing a mystery novel is a process, and when you work to get past those stuck points, you improve the process. So find your man with a gun in his hand and keep writing. Okay, I hope those tips help. I know it's it it happens. It get stuck, and I know a couple of weeks ago I was kind of stuck at a place in my story, and I had to go way back. I went way back to looking at my characters and digging deeper and adding more depth to my sleuth. And as I did that, I came up with ways those new additions that I was giving to my sleuth, those new additions were going to cause problems for the sleuth in the story. So the biggest message today about troubleshooting is trust the process, um, write other parts of the story and come back to that stuck place. Lots of times you just need to get away from being stuck, and it all resolves. And don't forget the 2 a.m. in the morning. Oh, that's it. Idea will come as well. All right. I want to thank you for being in the group, and be sure to share your process with the rest of us. When we share what's going on with our writing, it helps everyone. It really does help everyone. All right, thanks again. And oh, forgot. All right, for those of you who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas.